Hey, niaje wase, mko fiti? I hope mko poa. Pia mimi niko poa hapa kwa studio. I know it's been a minute. Manze, I've missed you. I hope you've missed me too much. But anyway, I'd like to welcome you to another session of Just a Podcast. And as always, I'm your host with the Moses. They call me Timothy. And today, I want us to introduce a new series. We were doing the test Left Untold. It was a series. We were talking about the stories about the African continent that many people don't like talking about. We finished that successfully and we went to Just a Podcast Insights, and now we are back again. Say back again. We are back again with a new series. It's called African Sexualities by Sylvia Tamale. It's a read that I was introduced to by a friend. I call her Trees for Life. We met at Yali. She's from Uganda, but in real sense, she's called Jessica. So thank you, Jessica, wherever you are. Shout outs to you for this amazing insight. Manze, I've read it and I feel like, okay, it's something, yeah? So I like to introduce a new session. We'll be doing this for it's a new series. It's a whole season, so expect like 10 episodes or more, depending on the time and variation and other constant factors. But anyway, let me introduce you to African Sexualities. It's a compilation of different articles from different perspectives and walks of lives and different authors, but it has been compiled by Sylvia Tamale. Jessica, see what you're doing to me. But anyway, as we dive deeper into the topic of the day, I know many of us understand when we talk about sexuality, you know what it entails. But today, let's take a different angle. It's still on Africa. It's like Tales Left Untold, but we are dealing with African sexualities. So to begin us off, I'd start by the process and then go to the presentation and then the politics surrounding African sexualities. The process. Sex is a taboo subject. Therefore, it is difficult to get people to talk and engage because of coyness, discomfort, and stigma. Well, developing a rapport with the research participants, many participants might feel threatened to relate or put down something so private and so personal. It entails personal beliefs, values, prejudices of researcher and the researched. The study might force a participant to remember things they wish to forget, which makes the research process traumatic and deeply hurtful to them. The experience might be too deep and embarrassing for the participant. It might invoke shame, denial, intimidation, tension, or anger. The participant might hesitate to divulge information because they hate being pitted on or fear damaging their body integrity. The research is likely to engage the researcher in difficult and unpredictable way. While we go to the presentation, the way participants relate to each other's age, sex, gender, sexuality, or personal presentation, and religion. Language. It might be impossible to translate words or nuanced meaning that do not exist in the research language. Veracity. How does the researcher know that the participant is being honest and not embellishing a story or experience? How can they test for accuracy of memory? The topic might be too complex. The participant might genuinely ask themselves, where do I start? There is no narrative, no language to convey the experience, no linear way to tell the story. It is too layered. Well, we go to the politics surrounding sexuality. An equal relationship between researcher and the researched. How does the researcher facilitate the voices of the participants and make them and the research relevant to them? Issues of confidentiality, private issues moving into a public realm. The sensitivity of the topic might make it difficult to get people to participate because of internal sensibilities such as people's spirituality, external sensibility, such as breaking the law, hopelessness of the situation whereby the researcher is not in a position to do anything to help a desperate participant. Well, these are some of the questions that before indulging a participant or a reader, they may tend to ask such questions. Why am I talking about sexuality? To me, is a taboo. According to our culture, is a taboo. But you realize that the age that we are living in, sexuality is no longer a taboo because it's something of this age and it's affecting us. So I think it's just right if we just have to talk about it. The complexity of the subject matter means that the process of designing a research project on sexuality is by no means a linear exercise. Rather, it's an undulating process. This means that there is nothing straightforward about the research. There are no holy cows, and the twists and turns are numerous. As the researcher plans, implements, and reflects upon the study, each decision might produce implications that require revisiting earlier decisions. This calls for maximum flexibility and minimum bias on the part of the researcher. A good sexuality research project does not view methodology as a mere appendages of issues of epistemology or a way of carrying out an inquiry. In short, I'm just trying to lay a foundation to make you understand why I decided to do the African Sexuality Dissect, because I thought it best if I introduced by the questions that a participant or a listener might want to ask, because they feel like this topic is like sensitive to them. So I'm just trying to create that environment whereby you don't have to feel nervous or kind of ashamed or pitied on. So when we talk about African sexualities, what do we mean? We have different understandings. If sexuality were a human being and she made a grand entrance into the African Union Conference Center, the honorable delegates would stand up and bow in honor. That's Sylvia Tamale. But the acknowledgement of and respect for sexuality would no doubt be tinged with overtones of parody and irony. Even sadness, because although sexuality might represent notions of pleasure and the continuity of humanity itself, the term conjures up discussions about sources of oppressions and violence. In fact, once sexuality got the podium and opened her mouth, the multiple complexity associated with her presence would echo around the conference room. This read intends to translate these echoes into comprehensible notions and concepts, carefully examining their different wavelengths and the terms of their power, and laying bare the theoretical, political, and historical aspects of African sexuality. The term African sexuality immediately provokes the questions: who or what is an African? What is sexuality? Who determines and qualifies as an African sexuality? Among other things, the reader attempts to address these deeply complex questions through lenses of history, feminism, law, sociology, anthropology, spirituality, poetry, fiction, life stories, rhetoric, songs, art, and public health, you name it. In this way, the reader offers a rare opportunity to theorize sexuality through various modes. The idea is to deconstruct, debunk, expose, contextualize, and problematize concepts associated with African sexuality in order to avoid essentialism, stereotyping, and othering. The material has been carefully selected to surface the complexity associated with what has pondered as an African sexuality and issues surrounding it. Let's dive into this. Generally speaking, by the time we were kids, we never knew about this. But when we grew into adults, many of us have done a great deal of learning, or some of us have experienced it firsthand. Some of us, we've been taught in school about sex education. I remember there were Straight Talk magazines back in the day when I was learning. For some of us, it was like it's an ordinary thing. For some, it's a norm. And we moved along the conveyor belt of the examination in post-colonial African education system. The informal cultural system and the education that largely emphasize children and questioning obedience to adults do not help either. But both formal and informal education in the main promote learning and dualism and absolute truth, such as right or wrong, good and bad, moral and immoral, inclusion and exclusion, and male and female. These do little foster reflective and critical thinking. So, dear listener, or dear family, wherever you're listening from, what was your understanding of sexuality? Did you think of sexuality as a thing of the West? Or did you ever stop to wonder if it's our African thing? I just want to conclude this thought about laying a foundation for African sexualities. I don't want to dive deep. As I told you, this is a reading podcast, and I don't want to drag matters deeper. I just want you to understand a bit by bit. Actually, if you have some time, you might go on the internet and look up for this book. It's called African Sexuality, compiled by Sylvia Samale. And as we continue venturing deeper and deeper, maybe we might go hand in hand. And as you understand, and as I explain out my thoughts and what I think of it, the type of message that the reader was trying to pass across. So in short, I'd like to leave you with that, to research more on this. And I promise you it's going to be a nice series. I just want you to stay tuned, stay listening, and I appreciate the love I've seen on social media. Actually, it's humbling to me. So I really thank you, and I hope I'll see you again in the future. It's been a nice time talking to you. Stay tuned. Until next time.